She's aided me in the transformation that has evolved in my life, from that of being single to that of being married, from that of being selfish to that of being sharing. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to some of you, and most importantly, present to all of you, the chairperson of First World Alliance, my friend, my sister, my Queen Mother, the one who stood for me at my wedding, Queen Mother, Sister Kepa. You can bring weight on it.
Hotep, brothers and sisters. My son, Brother Wade Noble, would you take the platform, please? All right. Good. All right. The brother who comes to speak to us at this time comes from Oakland, California. He is a social psychologist and a prominent theoretical scientist in the field of African psychology. He is also a leading African-centered researcher on African family life. Brother Noble is a professor of African studies at San Francisco State University and is currently the executive director of the Institute for the Advanced Study of Black Family Life and Culture, Incorporated. Over the years, he has authored several books. Among these are Understanding the Black Family, a guide for scholarship and research, Africanity and the Black Family, the development of a theoretical model, the Kemetic Husia, authoritative utterances of exceptional insight for the Black family, and African psychology towards its reclamation, reascension, and revitalization. I must also point out that he is an ASCAC National Executive Committee member and a National Board representative for the Western region of ASCAC. Brother Wade reminds us that African character is critical to the development of African development. It is the mark of mental and ethical traits of African people that distinguishes their quality. As we ascend in our African consciousness and deepen our thinking, this deepening of African thought within us transforms our character through understanding and lays a foundation for African ways of beingness and of becoming. A foundation for utilizing our African being to reshape the pathway of our existence and bring African truth to the world in our mission of building for eternity. Brother Noble's critical dialogue speaks to ancient Kemetic thought and practice, speaking truth and doing justice. Sisters and brothers, it is an African pleasure to bring forward and present to you our brother, Dr. Wade Noble.
It has become very clear to me every single day that the ancestors speak to us and through us. And the one principle that the ancestors like to remind us about is the principle of reciprocity. They do that in many different ways. A little while ago, a black man came into my country into my place called Oakland, California. That's my country.
Okay.
And he was with my people and had the audacity to call out my name to see if I was in the audience because he was taking roll. This black man is one of my best friends. And so my son had the opportunity of standing up and sharing with his uncle that I was taking care of our business someplace else. In the tradition of reciprocity, I have to ask, is Leonard Jeffrey in the house? Is Leonard Jeffrey? And with my brother in the house, I can now ask my mother if I have your permission to teach. Thank you. It is with my great mother's permission that I ask you all to allow me to assume a posture of reverence and respect while I give praise and credit to the source of all knowledge, all truth, and all wisdom. And I do that by saying out loud and in front of you that the Almighty, who is sometimes called Amun, and is sometimes called Aset, and is sometimes called Ptah, and it is sometimes called Jehovah, and it is sometimes called Obatula, and it is sometimes called Seshat, and it is sometimes called the Christ, and it is sometimes called Shango, and it is sometimes called Allah, and it is sometimes called Oya, and it is sometimes called Olatumari, and it is sometimes called Atum. That Almighty God, Amun, Ptah, Ra, although hidden, is the source of all knowledge, all truth, and all wisdom. And I pray in what I share with you this evening that Amun, Tehuti, Orumila will be satisfied. I must begin my talk by addressing the title of Ancient Kemetic Thought and Practice, Speaking Truth and Doing Justice, by pointing out to you that I've taken the liberty in struggling and in studying and looking at the ancient Kemetic teachings to pay particular attention to every time I come across the word noble, for obvious reasons. And it is in the discovery of the word noble that I think I'm able to capture as a preface, the title, Speaking Truth and Doing Justice. It is Hawa, chief official of the high priestess of Amun-Ra, who has said, I am a noble, for whom one should act, one of firm heart to the end of life. I am one beloved in his city, praised by his district, kind-hearted to the towns. I have done what the people love and God praises. I was one truly venerated and had no fault. I gave bread to the hungry and clothes to the naked. I put an end to pain and I erased wrongdoings. I buried the blessed, supported the aged, and satisfied the needs of the have-nots. I was a shelter for the child and a help to the widow. I was one who gave rank even to the infant. I did these things knowing their value and knowing their reward for the Lord of Ma'at, the reward to endure in the mouth of my people without end, to be remembered, to be well remembered for years and years to come. I dedicate the teachings of Herwa to my brother, Leonard Jeffries. It is in fact the case that I would like to think in front of you around the question of ancient Kemetic thought and practice, speaking truth and doing justice, in three areas. The first is ancient Kemetic thought and symbolism, and I want to suggest to you that ancient Kemetic thought and symbolism is the key to our organizing. The second is speaking the truth, and I want to suggest to you that speaking the truth is the key to our education. And the third is doing justice, and I hope to suggest to you that doing justice is the key to our transformation. Ancient Kemetic thought, symbolism, organizing for building for eternity, organizing is the question. And it seems to me that when we look at ancient Kemetic thought, we have to begin with a kind of adage that suggests that a people's theology is important. And I want to share with you that it is clear by now, I hope, in this audience, that we do not confuse theology with religiosity. And that when talking about theology, we're really talking about the rational study of the being of God. We're not talking about tambourine playing. We're not talking about incense burning. We're not even talking about ringing bells. When we're talking about theology, we're talking about the rational, logical study of the being of God. And it is said that the theology of a community assumes its truth, or the truth of that community's reality, at the given moment of that community's birth. Now that statement is very important because we have so often become conceptually incarcerated in terms of wondering where do we begin, or wondering what ideology, what theology, what psychology, what sociology is most appropriate for us, and we dabble in all other folks' stuff. And the rule is simple. If Marx was at the moment of our birth, then we can deal with Marx. If any other theoretician was at the moment of our birth, then we can deal with that person. As we look at child-rearing practice, we look at strategies for revitalizing our community, the simple question to ask is, were they there when we were there? If they were not, we ought to be careful with adopting their theories and their strategies. It is important for us to see that the task of theology has been to study and to analyze the implications of the truth that was established at the moment of our birth. That's our current task, is to determine the implications of the ancient truth. It is not enough to go back and get all this good stuff and talk about how we did this and we did that and how great we were. We have to look at and be very, very thorough in analyzing what are the implications of our ancient and archaic truth for the now. Because if we don't do that, then our history, though revealed, becomes dead. And our history cannot be dead if we, in fact, use it in terms of drawing implications from it. It seems to me that this notion becomes important because it allows us to ask a very basic, fundamental question. And that fundamental question is, what is our reason for being in the world? That's a question we should put over our babies' cribs. And as we nurse them to development, we should be humming the tune. What is our reason for being in the world? What is the truth of our reality, and how is that truth related to the moment of our birth as a people? It is through symbolism that the ancients gave us the scripture to understand the truth at the moment of our birth. It is through symbolism. It's not through literal word, it's through symbolism. And so we have to begin to struggle with understanding these sort of esoteric and metaphysical and symbolic realms. And even though they seem strange and you can make some sort of statement that you know sounds dumb, but other people think is profound because you say, I'm dealing with symbolism. But that's not the way we're supposed to deal with this issue. We're supposed to begin to try to struggle to understand what it means to be, because that beingness was established at the moment of our birth. And the ancients taught us that our beingness had two fundamental aspects. And they were really perceptual aspects, and in some sense cognitive illusions, but they were perceptual aspects. The ancients taught us that the visible realm was one aspect of being, but equally there was an invisible realm that was the other aspect of being. And it's because we've been following gods not of our own that we've limited ourselves to dealing only in the visible. And when we talk about the invisible, it becomes spookism. It becomes that's sort of like occult stuff, and we don't want to do with that. We're scientific or we're revolutionary, we're whatever, but we can't deal with that invisible stuff. But the ancients weren't talking foolishness. They were essentially arguing for us that the visible realm is the mortal, is the physical, and that the invisible is the immortal, is the spiritual. It is the visible that is thingness. It is the invisible that is no thingness. It is that nothingness, the no thingness, that is the spiritual. And our ancestors taught us that the visible and the invisible are actually one and the same. even though the invisible is far greater than the visible. What that says in sort of a very practical way is that this is me. This is me. But it is the we that is far greater than the me. That the me and the we are one and the same, even though the we is far greater than the me. We have to begin to look and conceptualize ourselves in a way that talks about that my visible me is related to the invisible spiritual we. So that as I see the black woman, I see the invisible me in her. I can't demean, dominate that which is me. As I see the black man, I can't be dissing the brother. And there's another brother. I can't be talking about there's another brother doing the problem, because I see the relationship between me and we. I see the relationship between the invisible and the visible. The symbolic is important in ancient thinking because it really allows us to see very important laws that were governing our understanding of the world. The symbolic was a method. It wasn't just drawing sort of signs on walls and drawing images on the halls. The symbolic was a methodology. It was a method of transcribing the intuitive vision by the use of images. And the intuitive vision became a mode of investigation where the natural phenomena of the world stood as symbol to represent the invisible law that we had to understand. So when you place the hawk as a symbol, the hawk simply represented our intuitive vision for understanding the invisible law that undergird our way of knowledge. It is in this basis that the ancients told us that you are able to know only that which is already innate in you. The problem for us as African people is that we don't know what is in us, and therefore we are not able to innately know it. What we do is we say, shit don't feel right. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's not right here. But we know it's in us, but we don't know yet how to do it in terms of a knowledge base. We haven't been able to do the analysis, and the instinct is still in us. The African instinct is still in us. We are able to know only that which is already innately in us. Now, I'm not talking about no sort of notion of a locked kind of potential where you can only do certain kinds of things. I'm really referring to the spirit that is in us is the spirit that represents everything in the universe. So the ancients were saying in symbolic language that we are only able to know that which is innately in us, and that which is innately in us is everything. There is nothing outside of the realm of African people. The ancients talked about and shared with us that the symbol should be viewed as the material, the visible representation of the immaterial. It is probably why, and this instinct notion is important, it is probably why African people pay so much attention to our appearance. Even to the point when we can call in our own memories how mamas and daddies would not want the children to be going out looking ashy or looking disarrayed and looking unkept, because they understood that the material, the visible, represented the invisible qualities and functions found in the universe. So if you looked raggedy, if you looked unkept, then you were giving a statement in symbolic methodology that said your essence, your nature was to be nothing. And so even though our grandmamas and grandfathers wouldn't talk about ancient Kemetic, talk about being African people, they were engaged in a praxis that demonstrated they understood intuitively, innately, all that there was to know about the universe. And as they polished us up, literally put Vaseline on our first day of school. Didn't have no Vaseline, you'd look over your shoulder and get a little lard so no one see it and use that. But they polished us up and sent us off to school because they were making a statement. They were making an ancient African statement of praxis that said, if my child is glowing, is visibly demonstrating the spiritual essence of power, there is nothing that he cannot or she cannot accomplish. And so they expected excellence from us because they had already manipulated and engaged in the African praxis of symbolism. It is in this context that we go to the ancient texts and we even see not only the symbolic but the language that teaches us that it is our way, the way of the ancient African mind, that allows us to begin to talk about understanding our way. It is from the book of Knowing the Evolutions of Ra that the god Nebuchadnezzar records the creation of the birth of the gods. And it is stated, or it is said, I am he who evolved himself under the form of the god Kemetic. I, the evolver of the evolutions. Think about that statement. The evolver of the evolutions. You can't be no more cause than that. I mean, if you are causing the cause, then you it. You have to begin to look at and understand what our ancestors were saying to us. I, the evolver of the evolutions in the developments which came forth from my mouth. No heaven existed, which came forth from my mouth. We can go quickly to West Africa and Central Africa and see the importance that African people placed on the power of the word, the nomo, that the word itself, the hearing of the word creates energy, creates heat. If you hear someone talking intensely, you get warm because the nomo is power. And the ancients said thousands of years ago that I am the evolver of the evolutions and the developments which came forth from my mouth. Take care in what we say to each other. The evolver of the evolutions and developments which came forth from my mouth. If we call each other nigger, we are creating the evolution of our own destruction. And white folks can go on vacation. We have to begin to be careful in understanding what we're talking about as we look at this question of organization and education and transformation. No heaven existed and no earth, and no terrestrial animals or reptiles had came into being. Blood is saying, I'm the beginning. I formed them out of the inert mass of watery matter. I found no place whereupon to stand. I was alone, and God's shoe and tefnut had not gone forth from me. There existed none other who worked with me. I laid, and this is the other important statement for me in this passage, I laid the foundations of all things by my will. I didn't ask permission. I didn't petition. I didn't beg. I laid all the foundations of all things by my will, and all things evolved themselves therefrom. I united myself to my shadow and set forth Shu and Tefnut out of myself, thus being one God. I became three. And Shu and Tefnut gave birth to Nut and Seb, and Nut gave birth to Osiris, Horus, Kent, Sut, Isis, and Nephthys at one birth, one after the other, and their children, us, multiplied upon the earth. That's our Genesis story. We have to begin to understand where we come from. The essence of God, the moment of our birth, the truth at the moment of our birth is our barometer for measuring our potential, possibility. We have to begin to look and take back where we are and who we are. The essence of God is metaphysically revealed in the myth as thought and command, not good and evil. Look at the difference. The essence of God is thought and command, thought and will. We're struggling around here thinking about the good side and the bad side, the evil side and the saint side, the black side and the white side. The truth at the moment of our birth says that the essence is will and intent. And intelligence is to intend for your will to be done. That's our way. That's our way. So as we look at our beginning, at the moment of our birth, I'm talking about our conscious birth. As we look at our birth, we can see that the ancients said that the divine law, when you boil it down and you look at all its many manifestations, the divine African law is to be. Is to be. Because in being, one can exert their will and their intent. If you are a doing person, you can get distracted. And because of, again, our conceptual incarceration, we run around here thinking that who we are is what we do. And so when they said you were slaves, we thought when they gave us slave work to do, we thought we were slaves. Or at least we could have thought that we were slaves. But because we came from a tradition that Africans understood that who we are is that we be, that we knew we wasn't going to be no slave, even though we did slave work. See, so we have to begin to understand the reason why we're here in this room today is because our most immediate ancestors could spend 300 and 400 years doing slave work, but they never said, we be slaves. We be slaves. The one thing they said very clearly was that we will be free. So we need to look at ourselves in the context of where we come from. It is this divine law. It is this divine law, and we know in terms of, again, the study of theology, that divine law, that for every divine law there is a moral mandate, a mandate that goes along with the law. And the divine law, the African divine law is to be, the moral mandate is that in being, we must continually to become more better. More better. Every day, more better. Every day, more better. Today, I'm a slave. Tomorrow, I'm going to be free. More better. More better. So we have to look at our way and begin to see that it is inscribed in the symbolic methodology of our culture. It is, in fact, that symbolic methodology that allows us, we start thinking symbolically, that allows us to begin to see our history in different ways. The notion of transformation in the African tradition in ancient Kemet was called sometimes the alchemical process of transformation to perfectibility. That the charge of life, of being more better, is to move in every aspect of life from a lesser material being to a greater spiritual being. And this greater spiritual being didn't mean you're going to get invisible and fly off. The greater spiritual being meant that you were going to be in tune with the natural energy, the divine law of the universe. And it's when you are in tune with the natural law, the divine energy of the universe, there is nothing that one cannot do. It is the symbolic methodology that allows us to think a different way. And that's part of the struggle that I think that we're still in. We're approaching and marrying and working and having relationships with ancient data. But we're not thinking in the way of the ancients who created that data. So we're still looking at, and maybe I'll take this as my own limitation. I still find myself looking at ancient thought in a way that I've been trained to look at thinking from a Western model of ideas. And so as I become more better, I'm going to see more things in our way. And so we have to begin to try to break out of this conceptual incarceration. One example of this is found in the fact that some interpretations talk about the ancient, the thousands of years of ancient Kemet, of civilizations and different gnomes rising and falling, and different godheads becoming central, and people in different areas fighting for ascendancy in terms of whose god was going to be the god, much like we see ourselves doing today. But they also point out that as one civilization went into ruin, they would take the broken bricks and use those and take them down or up the Nile and use those to build a new building. So it was like scavenging the rummage to build a new condominium. What we didn't see, because we weren't thinking symbolically, is that the ancient practice of embedding ancient stones in the foundation of new buildings was not because you couldn't buy no new stones and had to use old stones. It was the belief that one picked the stone whose inscription and whose symbols that were on the ancient stones had relevance for the principles that should be taught in the new civilization. So we were seeding buildings like your grandmama made bread. She took a little of the dough from the old batch and saved it, put it aside. And then when she was making new bread, she put that old batch stuff in it because she knew she could guarantee the quality of the texture and the taste by using that which she saved from the time when she was most good. And that mo better required you to build on your last mo better. So you can't just start anew. You can't start anew. It is this thought that says, look at the inscription on the stone. So they weren't just scavenging around saying, oh, this block is good, let's take it. They were looking at the inscriptions on the stone, and then based upon those inscriptions, they created the next epoch, the next era, the next great high civilization of ancient Egypt. And we know that in terms of that now new way of thinking, that we can see that Memphis and Heliopolis and Hermopolis and Thebes weren't competing theologies that were fighting amongst themselves. That in Memphis, the creative principle that was inscribed in the symbolism of the building. This is chemical engineering, I hope you see. Chemical engineering. Let me say it again. Chemistry. Chem-mystery. Chemistry. Chemical engineering. That they were engaging in chem-mystery. Understanding the mysteries of the black folk. That Memphis, the building of Memphis was built around the creative principle of unification. And we talk about the unification of North and South and Ptah and the Octet. But what we can see is that rises and falls. That as Heliopolis comes to place, Heliopolis takes the principle from the earlier principle and defines itself around the task of self-generation. I want to suggest that these notions may even have import for us in terms of psychotherapy, in terms of socialization of children, in terms of development, the issues of unification, the issues of self-generalization, comes back to this notion of will and intent. And then as Heliopolis rose and fell, Hermopolis takes its place, and we see Hermopolis building itself around the creative principle that in nature, all things are defined by the principle of unicity, that we can see unicity in all things. And then finally, when Hermopolis rises and falls and Thebes becomes the place of centralization, the creative principle becomes the notion that in being and in becoming, we are everything. We be, and we're going to be more better, we are everything. That we take on the attitude of being and being more better, we are everything. It is that divine law to be that we recognize that we really are the creative cause which makes us indestructible. As long as we believe someone else is our causality, then what they do, we must react to. And if they stop, we have to stop. If they become aberrant, become vulgar, become whatever, we have to react to them. It is only in recognizing that we are the creative cause that we become indestructible and invincible. That is the lesson that we can learn from the ancient way. That the moral mandate to become says that we reveal to ourselves that in being more better, in every day we must be more better, we must up the ante, then we really are eternal. Because this level of more better does end, but the next level just begins. And so we become eternal. Speaking the truth becomes an important requirement once we take ourselves into the framework of the ancient African symbolic methodology. Speaking the truth is the key to education. It is the key to education because speaking the truth tells us that it is the first principle of development, truth. It is the first principle, I believe, because it's embedded in what Naeem and myself call the really basis of psychology, the ancient Kemetic principle called Saku. And Saku was the understanding and the illumination, the eye or the soul of our being. And so psychology really was in ancient times in the African tradition was believed to be the study of the human spirit, not the study of pathology, not the study of behavior, not the study of rat conditioning. Psychology was the study of the human spirit, the study of human illumination, human understanding, the study of the glow that your mama created when she put the Vicks on your face. It is the study of understanding that the object is not what's real, it is the spiritual force that makes the object have movement. That is what's real. And so we are all psychologists. At least we who have decided we are reclaiming and rescuing the teachings of ancient Kemet, we are all psychologists, and if we are all psychologists, then we should be able to make the necessary mind transplants that our community needs. Our community has had a mind transplant, and we act like the monster Frankenstein because we do the will of Dr. Frankenstein. So we have to, so our job, it seems to me that our job is to engage in a praxis that allows us to recenter into our being the mentality of the African way, to do a mind transplant. And in doing that, the best stimulus for creating the mind transplant is to begin to speak the truth. We cannot speak the truth without beginning our conversation, at least in this place, by recognizing that all the negativity, all the deviance, all the aberrance, all the scars and ugliness we see in the African community are not our nature, but are the consequences of the singular ideological system of white supremacy. So if anybody asks us what's wrong with black folks, tell them it is white supremacy. If anybody asks you why black children can't learn, tell them it's white supremacy. If anybody asks you why we can't drive a car, tell them it's white supremacy. If anybody asks you why we can't pick our nose in public, tell them it's white supremacy. If they ask you anything is wrong about black people, you tell them to look at yourself and you'll find the reason. That we have to begin to stop apologizing, stop trying to come up with reasons why. That we ain't got no money, we ain't got no mama and no daddy in our homes, we ain't got no shoes, we ain't got no. The problem for us, if we teach the truth, is that African people were the only people who came to the Americas for the singular and sole purpose of human exploitation and dehumanization. All the other immigrants who come here, all these other folk who come and talk about they got here and they got a little Chinese store, a little Korean store, and they doing all good because they got all their kids in the store working with them. Say that's all fine and good, but you didn't come here. You didn't come here the way we came here. We didn't come here because we were escaping the potato famine. We didn't come here because we didn't like ourselves. We didn't come here because we got on a love boat and decided we went to the New World and found it nice and sent home to mommy and daddy for some money. We came here in a particular kind of relationship. And that relationship between black and white in this country is a relationship that black folks can no longer compromise with. We have to understand. In speaking the truth as part of our theme, in speaking the truth, we must teach our children that they can't compromise in any way with those whose original and permanent intent is the destruction of our humanity. We can't engage in polite conversation about the peculiar inferiority of black people. We can't engage in the polite conversation about I'm different from the other black folks and that's why I'm the only one in the university in this particular department. We can't engage in those conversations. We must teach the truth. We must speak the truth, and we must speak the truth that says the direct and indirect subjugation of all black people by white people is the basic purpose of their existence. That they, in fact, define us as being only of value to the extent and to the degree that we are pleasing and serve their interests. And we engage in that. We tap for them, we dance for them, we entertain them. We even allow our emergence of blackness to become a fad. And as we begin to take on the accoutrements of Africanity, we don't spend the time to educate our children that wearing kente or the African shield is nice, but it is not decoration we're talking about. There is substance. There is a visible and an invisible. And that as you wear the visible, that as you wear the visible signs of your Africanity, you must also engage in a systematic process of transformation so that you have the essence of being African, that you can no longer just put it on. You can no longer see that there is no area that we cannot have to struggle with the issues of white supremacy. It doesn't matter whether it's economics, whether it's education, whether it's entertainment, whether it's law, whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whether it is sex or war. In this country, we have to address there is no compromise when it comes to white supremacy and its operational form of racism. That we can no longer allow ourselves to see that all the things that make us situated, our land, our labor, and our life, have only value to the extent that white folks can exploit it. They exploit our music, they exploit our life, they exploit our creativity. We have to begin to recognize that we won't participate as we begin to speak the truth. We won't participate in the issue of black folks being valuable to the extent that we are the profit or the pleasure of white people. We cannot do it any longer. Speaking the truth. Speaking the truth tells us that the Europeans and later their Arab allies saw the value of African people in terms of the necessity of destroying the African family and deconstructing African manhood and African womanhood. That they saw that the only way they could control the spirit of African people was to deconstruct the sense of family, to remove us from seeing that the invisible and the visible are one and the same. They want us to believe in the supremacy of the individual so that we can separate ourselves from the condition of our brothers and our sisters, to destroy the sense of family, destroy the sense of peoplehood, to deconstruct the African manhood, the African womanhood. As we struggle today, we have to reconstruct what is the meaning of an African man, the meaning of the African woman, as these ideas flutter around in our communities about gender equity and manness and womanness, and we're trying to figure out what is our relationship. We got to be very careful because we've been conditioned to follow God's, not our own. And as we follow other people's struggles, we end up thinking that the basic issue is the liberation of black women, or the basic issue is the liberation of black men, and we have to understand that the basic issue is the liberation of the African relationship. It is our relationship. It is our ability. It is our ability to be able to relate in an African essence that determines our ability to engage in that possibilities of being more better. I can't be more better without relating to that which gives me energy. You can't be more better. So it is not my this or me or you. It is the relationship that we raise up. It is the relationship between man and woman, the relationship between, as we talked about last night, the relationship between eldership and infantship. That we have to see that there's a necessity to be breathed on by our elders, to feel their energy, to feel their breath, to get the eye look from great mother, to see that eye that tells us you ain't doing it right, to see the eye that tells us you doing it so bad, do it some more, to see the eye that tells us you have the power, that even though I am an elder and I am old, I give you permission to kick butt. And black folk kick butt. If your mama tells you to fight, you don't have to worry about no coach, you don't have to worry about no preparation. So it's the elders that we have to begin to understand as part of our reclamation. And the third way that the Europeans and Arabs attempted to destroy our essence is by the delegitimation of our language or our ability to communicate. The whole notion that we communicate is the means of relationship. And so they attacked our ability to communicate as a way of distorting or destroying our relationship. So we struggle with thinking about how we're going to say it, or do we speak the proper English, whether it be the queens or the kings. It don't matter. It's not ours. But we still struggle with those issues and not realizing that it's not how we say something. It's not what we say. It is how we say it. And what determines how you say it is who you're saying it to. It's the relationship. It's a relationship. So I can say one thing to an elder brother and say the exact same literal words to a brother, my peer, and it's the way I say it that gives it meaning, not what I'm saying. We have to understand our relationship. We have to understand in teaching the truth and speaking the truth that we have had disruptive forces on the African sensibility. Those disruptive forces I have begun to codify as six essential events in continental Africa as well as diasporic Africa that has disrupted our essence, and in disrupting the African essence has distorted the African expression of who we are. So we don't look like, we don't act like the real, original, authentic African because our essence and our expression has been disrupted. And those are religious conversion, colonialism, and in terms of continental Africa, religious conversion, colonialism, decolonialism, neocolonialism, industrialization, and nationalism. And you can parallel those 6 events in terms of what it impacted upon in terms of the African essence and the African expression. In terms of diasporic Africa, we here in the United States, the same things can be saw. We can see religious conversion. We can see this notion of New World slavery that parallels colonialism. We can see emancipation that parallels decolonialism. We can see reconstruction that parallels neocolonialism. We can see urbanization that parallels industrialization. And we can place this notion, or at least the first phase of black consciousness, as paralleling nationalism. What did they disrupt? They disrupted our spiritual, material, conceptual, social, affective, and cognitive realms. They affected our rhythm. We're off balance. We're drunk. We're off center. And what we see that in our expression. We see it in terms of how we see the perceptual realm. We see things being white better than black. In the physical realm, we begin to see that our fundamental value is in the fact that we can run, jump, and do physical things and not mental things. We see it in the cognitive realm, where we begin to put caps on our ability to think and understand. We see it in the mental realm, where we don't even conceptualize the world as what it really is. And we see it in the emotional realm, where we begin to put boxes on ourselves about who we can feel about and what we can feel and how we can feel. And we see it in the political realm, where we begin to believe that it is our task simply to find those allies in the other alien world that can do for us what we can't do for ourselves. That's an expression that is distorted and is based upon systematic understandings of our way. So we understand, almost in a medical model, if we understand the path of the disease, we can reverse the path and define the healing process. That is the transformation of what we're talking about in this conference. It is Diop who shared with us his genius and argued that there were 3 factors which contributed to the cultural identity of any people: the historical, and you all know this, the historical, the linguistic, and the psychological. Diop argues that the historical factor is the cultural cement, and this is in Civilization of Barbarism, that the historical factor is the cultural cement that unifies the disparate and different elements of a people to make them into a whole. It is that historical band that unifies us and makes us into a whole by the particular slant that history places on our feelings about historical continuity and creates a totality of our collective. You have to ask the question, and we have to respect Diop, but not to deify Diop. We have to begin to see that Diop, as a good teacher, gave us more questions to answer than answers to memorize. And so Diop tells us by his analysis that we have to ask the question, what is meant by the feeling of historical continuity? Is it enough to put the timelines on the walls in the classrooms and have children see where we've come from? Or is that a feeling? What does Diop mean by the feeling of historical continuity? Is it the historical consciousness that engenders and allows the people to distinguish themselves as a people rather than a population? We have to begin to ask ourselves these questions, because these questions help us to reverse the disease process to a healing process. Historical consciousness provides the people with a feeling of cohesion. Take it back to the symbolisms of ancient Egypt. The first notion of unification, of unicity. Translated in modern language, it's cohesion. It is what Martin Luther King talked about when he referred to black folk. He called us his beloved community. So the beloved community, be in love with unity. That's what beloved community means. Be in love, calm with unity. Be in love with unity. If we begin to think in our symbolic methodology, then we can read the scripture in nature that our leadership has provided us, even when they wouldn't call themselves Afrocentric. Even when they wouldn't, because their instincts, it is the instinctual nature of the African being to do African stuff, even when our minds, our heads, our training has taught us to use a different kind of thinking process. But when we dig deep in our own essence, we pull out the stuff that is our stuff. Unfortunately, the children can't read it because we have begun to see through the perceptual distortions of white supremacy. Diop says that it is that how does historical consciousness result in this feeling of cohesion? He argues that historical consciousness constitutes the safest and the most solid shield of cultural security for a people. Now that sounds good. I like that. I can use that. Historical consciousness constitutes the safest and most solid shield, put out in front of me, of cultural security for our people. But as the master teacher, Diop is really telling us, you have to answer what is cultural security. What does it mean? Does it mean that we have holidays every month, and that we put on our uniforms every month, and we talk about we are secure in our cultural identity? These are questions that have to be asked and answered by us. Diop doesn't answer them. He just puts it out there. We have to begin to struggle with these fundamental issues because these are the things that our children need to be more better. We have to begin to look at it. This is why every people, in terms of this cultural security, every people seek only to know and to live their true history. No other people give voice to the truth of someone else's history, except us. Except us. We teach about George Washington's lie and Abraham Lincoln's illusions. We teach other people's history. No other people do that. No other people teach the truth of someone else's history. And we sit in shame and silence when we raise up the question of African-centered education and people try to challenge us, and we forget that the basis of our education is truth. Is truth. We're not saying that we got to have African stuff because it's African people. We're saying that African-centered education is the only education that teaches the truth of the African experience to African people. And no other people have to apologize for that. It is essential. The essential thing is to rediscover the thread that connects them to the remotest past. Diop argues the essential thing, to rediscover that thread that connects us to our remotest, as far back as we can go, ancestral past. What is the essential thing? That's what we have to ask. We can't deify Diop. We can't just say Diop there and we got it and we can go now. Diop is a master teacher. He's giving us more questions on the exam than study guides. See, so we have to answer the questions. The most efficient cultural weapon with which a people can arm itself is historical continuity. Diop gives us that. We have to keep that in mind, but we have to also answer the questions that are there. Diop also suggests to us that the linguistic factor, of the three factors, the linguistic factor is equally important. He suggests that the linguistic factor is the constituent element of cultural personality and cultural identity. And he goes, we have to ask the question, what does African linguistic unity mean? And how is it experienced? How it's experienced is more important even than what it means. We're not speaking Igbo. We're not speaking Yoruba. We're not speaking Fulani. So are we removed from the African cultural unity, the African cultural identity, because the linguistic factor, as defined in the formal study of languages, is removed from us? What does African linguistic unity mean? Is it what we speak? Is it how we speak? Is it who we speak? Is it all of the above? Those are questions we have to answer. Diop doesn't give that to us, and scholarship hasn't given to us, and we're not going to find that in the psycholinguistic literature in the academy. That's our challenge. Our challenge is to define these things. The one thing that I offer as a contribution is the definition of power. Power is the ability to define reality and to have other people respond to your definition as if it were their own. We have to take the power. And it is my humble criticism of Diop that I believe because he was so thoroughly trained in linguistics that even the giant genius of Diop was incarcerated by the methodology and the theory of language, and that we have to be careful in just taking the methodologies and the theories that we've inherited as being trained in a white supremacy system of education and use those to analyze African things. So we have to begin to rethink, take power and define even what language means. Define what language means, define what the relationship means. The third principle that Diop shares with us and guides us through is the psychological factor. And you obviously know that when I got to the psychologically section, I was really interested here. Diop says that the psychological factor is traditionally grasped in the qualitative way through which literature is presented, especially poetry. And he suggests that it is this qualitative way through which literature is grasped that the other two factors, history and linguistics, are susceptible to rigorous scientific analysis. I think that Diop, again, with all due respect, Diop may have been blinded by his own personal opposition to the negritude poets, who begin trying to develop a notion of the African personality through the literature and the poetry of the African spirit, and not the illumination and the understanding of the African soul. And so when he did that, he... Now I gotta tell you, my sister said, say it one more time, slow down. But then she tells me, we got to hurry, get out of here. So now, I'm in a dilemma here now. So I'm trying to get through this. Yeah. Diop suggests that the psychological factor is important because the psychological factor that has been primarily defined in terms of literature, i.e. through poetry, that the psychological factor is important because the other two factors, history and linguistics, are susceptible to rigorous scientific analysis only through understanding them. You can't understand what he's saying, so you can't understand the psychological factor directly. You have to understand the psychological factor by way of understanding the historical and the linguistics. And my critique of that is that Diop, in his own intellectual opposition to the negritude poets who begin talking about an African personality through literature and through poetry, Diop was intellectually in opposition to them, so he relegated the psychological factor as being less important in terms of scientific analysis because he thought it could only be done, scientific analysis could only be done in literature and in history. And I want to suggest to you, into Diop's memory, that the psychological factor can be submitted to scientific analysis if we put in our heads the right methodology and the right symbolic system that allows us to explain our essence and our expression. Even though it is done, you see it in our literature, you see our essence in our literature and in our poetry, but you also see our essence in the way we wake up in the morning and approach our children, the way we deal with work, the way we deal with play, the way we deal with the creative moment. And so we have to begin to rethink that issue. What are, the questions again that my master teacher directs me to, is what are the psychological and cultural invariants? What's the stuff that doesn't change? What are the psychological and cultural invariants that political and social revolutions leave intact? It's an important question. We get all this shit thrown on us. Butt kicking all the time, giving up stuff, give it up, give it up, give it up. What's important for us to know is not what we're giving up, but what things have remained intact in spite of white supremacy, in spite of domination, in spite of exploitation, because that core stuff is the resiliency factor that we can build on to rehabilitate all those things that we've given up. So we have to begin to see that there is something here. Diop asks in the light of Africa becoming more individualistic, and when Diop in his writing talks about Africa becoming more individualistic, we can talk about the whole African world becoming more individualistic. And he asked the question, how can one explain the feeling of cultural identity through this permanent change? I raised the question. Diop is telling us that there's a permanent change that's the consequence of our domination and exploitation? Or is the African way to say that change is continual? We're going to be more better. So maybe there was not a permanent change in the African beingness. There is a momentary stagnation in our development. And when we're standing still, we think we are permanently changed. But as we think, we can begin to reconceptualize ourselves and think in a different way. So I conclude that the historical and linguistic factors, and I kind of turn Diop's perception upside down and suggest that the historical and linguistic factors really constitute the coordinates or the reference points in relationship to our psychic changes. You can analyze our history and our language as a barometer for measuring our psychic changes. We are the illumination. As we go through destructive systems of exploitation, we no longer glow. And so the historical moment of exploitation dulls the African spirit. What we see is the dulling of the African spirit, and we see that through the historical moment. What we have to do is not talk about the historical moment, but talk about what kind of historical conditions must we create in order to re-illuminate the African spirit. We have to begin to think through these things in a way that gives us keys to action. Keys, if you will, to doing justice. Doing justice. The analysis is not important if it doesn't lead us to the point of doing justice. And it is in our tradition that, again, we return to the moment of our birth. Because in returning to the moment of our conscious birth, we understand the question of what is our purpose in this world. The ancients told us that doing justice was really part of the symbolism of Ma'at. And that the symbolism of Ma'at speaks to truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, propriety, and order. That those 7 principles become the key, the building blocks, the prescription, the blueprint for doing justice. That Ma'at represents the proper quality of African being and becoming. Let me say that again. Ma'at represents the quality of African being and becoming. Being African means standing in truth. Being African means just, righteousness, harmony. Being African means due balance, due propriety, due order. I always point out the fact that propriety is an important one, because even in our doing Ma'at, or doing justice, if you will, in our communities, when the bum and the derelicts and the brothers got on the corner who had no job and had really sort of become the outcast of the community and were drinking out of the dirty, nasty wine bottle and using vulgar language, when the sister walked by, the bum said, "Oops, excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am," because the bum, the derelict, understood doing justice. Understood doing justice and never heard about no Ma'at, never heard about no Kemet, never heard about no ancient Africa. But it was the instinct of the African residual that's been in our culture from the moment we began in this life. Those residuals and those retentions, the instinct that ushered us to say there is, in fact, proper conduct. There is proper conduct that we must engage in. It is Ma'at that the ancients defined in terms of us understanding intellectually this notion of proper conduct. It was Ma'at that says that in the cosmic expression of the universe must be understood in terms of it being an edifice of harmony, order, stability, and security. You could guarantee that the Nile was going to rise and recede. That's understanding stability and security. It was Ma'at that understood, that the ancients taught us to understand that the metaphysical realm, the metaphysical expression, is to recognize that behind everything, behind the visible, is in fact the invisible that speaks to uprightness, that speaks to righteousness, that speaks to truth, that speaks to justice. As we see the behavior out front, we see the behavior out front, but we have to get behind the behavior to see whether it is in fact righteous. That's what happens in the bars in the community where sisters and brothers are talking, and brothers are running that front thing up front and talking all that old wop about who he is, and the sister gets right behind that and sees where the truth is and asks, what are you really about? Who are you? It is the same principle. It is the same metaphysical principle that allows when in our development, before we get off center, and boys would go to girls' homes and knock on the doors and try to talk about wanting to date, and daddies and mamas would sit them down, and the first question they would ask was the metaphysical question. Who is your people? That's a metaphysical question. We don't think about it. We think they're getting in my business. We think they're getting too nosy and what y'all upset. But the metaphysical question was to ask who was responsible for instilling in you righteousness, instilling in you truth, instilling in you a love for justice, because you take my child out here. I expect you to do the right thing. And I can't judge whether you will do the right thing based upon what you say. I can judge whether you do the right thing based upon who made you, who produced you, who made you be, who is your people, is a metaphysical question. We have to begin to see ourselves and understand our behavior in the context of our own intellectual psychology. The physical expression of Ma'at was the rulership that governed the building of the pyramids. The physical expressions of Ma'at said things must be level, even, straight, correct, regular, and balanced. That's the pyramid. And that same physical thing was really what? The physical manifestation of the spiritual. There's the visible and there's the invisible. And when we see the perfect pyramid, we are seeing a people saying, I am giving to the world a symbol that represents who we are. Take that and try to distort it because we built it not for today, but for eternity. We have to understand. We have to see the connections and see the connections in our symbolic world. We have to see the fact that the 7 cardinal virtues of Ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, propriety, and order that were inscribed 3,000 years ago were in the energy of the universe. And when Maulana Karenga reached down into his creative genius and pulled out the Nguzo Saba, he pulled out a system that was part of a prescription for black healing that was consistent with the ancient cardinal virtues of 3,000 years ago. Before Maulana began to use his creative genius to understand the systems of ancient Kemet, the ancestors speak to us and through us, and they direct us. And so when he came up with unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith, he was given currency, modern currency, to truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, propriety, and order. Our way is in the air. Our way is there for us to see. And it is Brother Dr. soon-to-be Elder Jake Carruthers who has taught us that doing justice can be seen and prescribed in the 3 basic positions of the African-centered movement. And Jake says to us that the African-centered movement ascribes to the belief that there is a universal, distinct African worldview, which should be the foundation for all African spiritual, psychological, intellectual, social, political, economic, and artistic development. It is that belief in a distinct African worldview that when we talk about doing justice, we can look at the path of time and see that in ancient Thebes, our ancestors said that Amun, the god Amun, or the force Amun, was the power of God, the generative capacity. And as we move from North Africa and go to the Bantu peoples of South Africa, we see our people saying that Intu was the force of God, the thing that gives us the universal African worldview. And as we move from South Africa to the Dogon people of Central Africa, the Dogon teach us that the Nomo was the vital force of God, the word that allows us to see the universal African worldview. And as we move from Central Africa to West Africa, we see the Akan people telling us that the Kra was the divine breath of God. The consistency is over and over again. And as we leave the continent of Africa and go to the land of the Busa people, Black USA, blacks in the United States of America, as we move to the land of the Busa people in North America, we see that the Busa people told us before we got off our center, they told us that the essence of being is that the black man, the black woman has to have soul, heart, soul. And then white folks take it, we get confused and begin to engage in stuff like blue-eyed soul and blonde-eyed soul. We cannot compromise our essence by sharing it with someone else. But the fact of the matter, is that from North Africa, South Africa, Central Africa, West Africa, and the Busa people of the Americas, there's been one consistent thing. And that consistent thing is that there is an African essence. There is an African essence that drives the universal African worldview, which has to be the foundation of what we do. Brother Jake taught us teaches us that the second principle of position of the African-centered movement is that it advocates for the restoration of the historical truth as a priority for the guiding force of our scholarship and our practice. And I have offered in extension that the advocacy really is the advocacy for the restoration of the African character as the basis for determining our historical truths. It is that African character that is so critical, because as you analyze and look at the train or the chain of African historical events, it is only at those times and in those places that time and space was ruled by the African character that we see great achievement. As soon as we change, as soon as we integrate, as soon as we follow God's not our own, we see a downturn in our greatness. So it is the character that becomes an important principle for us looking at, and I suggest to you and offer to you that the African character is the complex of mental and ethical traits that distinguish us as a people, and that those ethical traits can be defined again by codifying and collapsing our values and our virtues and putting them out in front of us and teaching our children that the ethical traits of the African character are the virtues of mind: truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, propriety, and order. Those are our virtues. That we can talk about the virtuous black man. We can talk about the virtuous black woman by asking who stands on truth, back and who determines harmony by their presence in the community, by asking who establishes order where there is disorder in our community. That's the virtuous African man or African woman. We can teach our children that the African character is a character that is based upon value or values, and that our values begin with respect for eldership. Our values begin with responsibility for our children. Our values begin with having restraint in what we do. Our values begin with allowing our relationships to be ruled by reciprocity, and our values begin by talking about the resiliency of our condition when we are confronted with imbalance. Our values are respect, responsibility, restraint, reciprocity, and resiliency. We can teach our children that there is a mental attitude. There is a way of thinking that's black folk thinking, that we think a certain way, and those thinking is tied to and reflected in our attitudes and in our attributes. And our attitudes and attributes come from the ancient scripture that talks about the 10 principles of initiatory mastery, that our attitude is driven by the sense of appropriateness. You don't do anything and everything anywhere. That our attitude is driven by the sense of excellence, that whatever it is, we're going to do it more better. That our attitude is driven by faith that our teachers will teach us the truth. That our attitude is driven by being free from resentment when someone wrongs you. Sometimes we got to question that because we get wronged so many times that maybe we got to give some shit back to somebody, but we can refine some things if necessary. But we have to also talk about an attitude that says be free from resentment when you are wrong. And that sometimes we do wrong stuff to each other and we hold resentment that contaminates the relationship that we have in building the beloved community that Martin Luther King talks about. An attitude that says, first and foremost, it is our obligation and responsibility to teach in our children pride in their race. That we're not going to apologize for saying, yes, you are black, yes, you are African, and there is no one, nowhere better than you. We need to teach our children. We need to teach our children to have what Marcus Garvey used to call race men and race women, race pride. We to see that as part of our obligation for creating and manipulating and massaging the mental attitudes that represent the African way. And ultimately, we have to teach an attitude in our people that as they become more better and become the more better person that's around, that in being more better, they must also be humble in the face of their community. That we can never let our more better separate us from our community. That humility is part and parcel of the African mental attitude as we create the African character. The attributes that are important that we've identified and used in our teachings and work in the African community, the attributes that are part of the mental traits are attributes of mastery, not just learning, mastery. And again, in the 10 principles of literary mastery, the first mastery is mastery of one's own thought. We have to stop thinking like white people. We have to stop placing white people up in deification. The attack that I enjoyed by hanging out with Lenin is that I suggested in one discussion that Greek philosophy is vomit. And we should stop being the vomit drinkers. Now, let me take a minute to explain that, because if you don't think symbolically, you just think that I'm talking about this stuff is funky and nasty. If you understand that anytime the body goes into a new environment, its digestive system and its dietary habits become shocked by the new texture and the new quality of the substance that it must intake. And when you intake that substance and it is new to you, you either have diarrhea or you vomit until your system gets acclimated to the richness of the new substance. When Greece went into Africa under affirmative action programs, they took a rich diet of intellectual abilities in their system. The paleness of their system could not accommodate the richness of our diet, and so they began to vomit. And when they vomited, what the world received was Greek philosophy. Now, for the record, in case there is a brother or sister who's a reporter that's going to report this again, I want to break this down because sometimes symbolic thought is hard to comprehend. The statement, the admonition, don't be the vomit drinkers, is to say that if you see vomit and you are a scientist, you don't drink the vomit, you analyze the texture and the quality and the ingredients of the substance to determine what was its original form. So black scholars, black intellectuals, rather than drink Greek philosophy as vomit, we must know Greek philosophy, analyze it, critique it, determine what was its original form, its original constitution, so we can go back to the original source. That's the purpose. That's the purpose. That's the purpose of our scholarship. Our scholarship is to recognize that there is no substance, no state, no condition that we cannot master and understand, and if it is our pleasure to determine how it was derived based upon its connection to the original thing of all things, which is the African way. The attributes of the African mental trait then is to have the cognitive flexibility to be able to deal with all that which is Western thought, and at the same time go to the left side and deal with that which gave birth to Western thought, and don't see them as antithetical or opposite continuums. That Western thought is truly the thinking of children. And that if we are to reclaim our position as the parents and the adult and the continuum of humanity, then we must begin to think as adults. And we see our children having temper tantrums because they cannot express themselves in a way that we as adults are accustomed to. We don't say that ours is in opposition to the child. We simply recognize that the child is immature. We don't have to talk about white thought being in opposition to black thought, because that's not true. That white thought is infantile thinking. And that if you love children, if you have the desire, you may want to give them an educational system that will allow them to evolve to the higher level. African-centered education is good for any human being, because to be human is to be African. And the final two attributes that I would like to offer to you, or the final three attributes that are part of our mental trait, is courage, is an attribute. Courage, the ability to struggle, to not be afraid, to tell the truth in our intellectual, mental enterprise. Defiance, the ability to stand up and say, I defy you to prove me wrong. But the issue that we can take from the methodologies and the epistemologies of the Western world is that we can always throw to them the no. I argue that Africa is the origin of humanity. If you think that is wrong, then I will recast it as the null hypothesis and suggest that you simply disprove it. I don't have to prove it. I do not scientifically have to prove it. You have to disprove it. That is defiance. And the final attribute is integrity, that we must, in our beingness, in our becoming, see as a mental trait integrity. Integrity, to be able to stand upright, to be able to not compromise on the truth, to be able to say, I will not even mask it and make it palatable in mixed company. The truth is the truth, wherever we find it. It is the African-centered movement that collapsed these notions that Jake has offered us, because the final third point that he makes in the positions of African-centered education, African-centered movement, is the acknowledgement that the precondition for the freedom of the African mind is the development of healthy human functioning African people, is the massive African-centered education and re-education of African people throughout the world. That's our charge. That's what we are creeping up to. That is the movement that African people are now clarifying as our movement for the 90s. The massive re-education and education of African people that's centered in an African pedagogy in praxis. That's not just about curriculum, it's about the relationship in the classroom, it is about the relationship of the school to the community, it is about the development of human beings, that are the objective being to promote the next generation of African people. The only definition of education that we should hold in front of ourselves is a definition that says education is simply and most assuredly the process of intentionally and objectively reproducing and refining the best of ourselves. That's what education is. Reproduce and refine the best of ourselves. If we look at our grandchild and we can't see a refinement of our great-grandfather, we have done miseducation. If we allow an educational system to educate our children so that when they come home, we do not recognize them as a refinement of the best of ourselves, we have submitted our children to genocide. We have to understand what it's about. The intent of education is to reproduce and refine the complex of mental and ethical traits which signify the distinctive quality of African people, in which in turn maximize our human functioning and our human potential. The purpose of education is simply and straightforwardly, in my estimation, self and social sovereignty, rulership. The purpose of education is not to get a good job. The purpose of education is not to be able to get you somewhere in the suburbs with the aliens. The purpose of education is self and social sovereignty. Education for mastery, education for rulership, education for governance relative to self, family, community, society, and the world. When we send our child to school, when we send children to school, as we reinstitute, reclaim, rescue, and reestablish an African-centered education, then we can guarantee that when that child comes home, he will be on the path of development where he or she will feel comfortable and natural with rulership, comfortable and natural with governorship, comfortable and natural with understanding that their divinely inscribed relationship is to be the ruler of self, the ruler of family, the governor of community, the governor of society, and ultimately the African reclamation of the governance of the world. We are psychologists, each and every one of us. And in the book African Psychology, I would like to close with a poem that I wrote as a preface to this book. The poem says to black psychologists, I was writing to my colleagues, but I'm sharing this with all of us now because I think it's apropos. We, African people, are standing in the river. Alone, we shall be swept away by its currents. United, we can know the many rivers to cross. Individually, we shall drown in its depths. Combined, the river will guide us to a higher ground. Singularly, we are halted by the torrent of its banks. As one people, the river shall carry us to a distant place. As one people, the river shall return us to the source. Black psychologists, black people, we are standing in the river, transformed and transforming. Thank you very much.
Say blacks hate blacks. It's not just a myth. Why is it we do not have the same respect for members of our race as we do for some other race, especially the white race?
So listen, talk to me, what y'all eat is around sex. Yeah, man. See, E was the drug of choice when white children were participating in things called raves. Check. Now, the object of a rave, you have to, it's like a scavenger hunt. You have to find out where that's dumb, that's stupid. You got to find the party, and you got to get these clues and find where the party is. Then when you get there, it's already 4 o'clock in the morning. So you get about 3 hours, before the sun comes up. So now, in order to make it through this party the rest of the night, you got to take this up. You got to take this speed. Check. Then the rumor is that it works like Viagra. Viagra. So you've already, look what you're dealing with now. You're dealing with a psychology that tells young people sex defines who you are, your acceptance. So you find 14, 15-year-old girls vulnerable. Since they're defining themselves through this activity. After all, that's all they see in the videos, and the message they get is that if I get this up, I end up with him. I'm a fatty girl. Not understanding that entertainment is a lie. You will end up with 2 and 3 children sitting at home gaining weight. No. Lonely, disappointed that because at 18, 19, your breasts are now down to your knees. I'm not saying that to be cruel. The reality. He's nowhere to be found. You gave it up first and turned around to him while laying there and said, do we go together? That's dating backwards. Do we go together? And he told you quite honestly, no. You said why? He said, I already went. Are you with me? This is what's happening. So we're finding young mothers disenfranchised from the old babies now. See, it doesn't mean to mistreat the children, but she's going through a depression. Most women suffer some form of depression after giving birth anyway. It's natural. But when we don't teach our young people about the values of their bodies, we'll find more young girls, 16, 17 years old, sitting here in Baltimore contemplating suicide. When I go into your high schools and I do a routine with the young people, and I ask the young ladies when I'm working with only young ladies, how many of you ever considered suicide before? 40% of them raise their hand. And they're in the 9th, 10th, 11th grade. I don't work with seniors. And you tell me I can't come here and talk about sex to Pookie and Peaches? You crazy. Statistics clearly show from 1980. So, when I got 5th graders and 4th graders concentrating on whether or not they got a boyfriend or a girlfriend and cannot pass the state minimum test. So, we got to meet fire with fire. So, you got to show up at the schools. You got to detoxify children. You got to ask the 3 questions when they come home. First of all, you got to tell them before they leave to go to school, and when they come in, first thing out your mouth is, I love you. Secondly, what did you do in school today? Now, you can tell whether your children are suffering from psychomedia perpetrating disorder if they respond to you by saying nothing. Then I want you to say, you were there for 7 hours today, and you did nothing. Then ask the second question, what's your homework? And when they respond to you, I ain't got none. You say, why? Yeah. Then thirdly, I want you to say, well, show me your books. And if they say, I forgot them, you say, well, forget my belt. It's upstairs on the doorknob, bring it down. Now, you don't have to hit, but we're going to reinforce some things here through psychological trauma. Because you won't forget them no more. It's war! How dare you be gone and absent from my home for 7 hours a day, and you tell me you learned nothing, and the scary part about it, they're speaking truth. But see, I know what make a school move. When you show up. If your child is learning the same thing you learned when you was in the 3rd grade some years ago, it's antiquated. If you love your children, show up at school. White folks leave job every day. Every other day makes it, they lie about going to the doctor. They went to the school. Get involved with your child in school. Let me get right back to here and I'll give you a break and we'll come back. We'll do the ingredients and alcohol and any questions you have after that, we'll move on. But let me move here with this ecstasy drug. We have to be careful. Because brothers out selling the pills right now. I'm sure somebody can take me to the block and we can cop right now some E. This is not supposed to appear in our community, but guess what? The revolutionary brothers in the rap scene. Guess what they're saying in their videos and on their songs? What drug they're singing about now? E. Brother Jabbar, drop me some of those names we were sharing about the E being the number thing, the drug being pushed. What was those songs we were talking about? Was Ja Rule?
3 6 Mafia.
Yeah, 3-6 Mafia. And I'm not talking about them as persons. I'm trying to prove to you, if you go into the business, I will dictate what you sing about. Pull them up. The challenge to you is to pull them up. Now you got to ask yourself, if these brothers so conscious on this song, how could they sell us death on this song? Instead of attacking the brothers, say, why is the recipe this way? Check. Why do Janet Jackson appear to your daughters, and Janet Jackson talks about some things that make you blush as a grown woman? And you let the CD just play all through the house. And this toxicity comes into the mind of your daughter. Check. So the terrorist is in our community. Every day. Misinformation. Let me touch on this relationship thing real quick, because that E has something to do with that. First of all, Viagra just within itself is dangerous. No. Gentlemen, you better recognize, check. I mean, you better get a real physical exam, all that. I'm not a MD, so I can't tell you, nothing. But you need to understand, particularly for African-American men, we don't go get checked enough anyway. Half of us in this room sitting here right now with hypertension. Okay, now you take some Viagra without being checked by a doctor. Viagra produces blood flow. Massive blood flow. It doesn't regulate, it doesn't stop at the aorta and say, oh, only 2 liters in. That's enough. It doesn't do it. It just sends blood flow. That's what makes your penis erect. Okay? So when you taking that, as Dr. Africa has warned you and told you over and over, you need to be very careful. Extremely careful. Now they're selling it to our young teens in the version of ecstasy, talking about how it will sustain their sexual prowess, and it does not. It does eventually what malt liquor does with the combination of marijuana. It causes chemical castration. If you are male, and I'll get more into this when I break down malt liquor, and your consumption of alcohol is such, with a mixture of other drugs, and I'll just say marijuana since it's so prevalent in our community, that you're not waking up with an erection or semi-erection, and you're not yet 29, 30 years old, the damage has occurred. You're supposed to wake up every morning like a soldier. Check. Can I keep it real, Check? You know the same thing when you used to see your son walk to the bathroom in the morning, you're like, aha, that's my boy. You know, as men, can I keep it real? You know what we was talking about, right? It's a badge of honor. Check. But it's sad when I'm dealing with 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, smoking herb every day, chasing with malt liquor. And they say, well, I don't wake up like that every morning unless I've been playing with it before I go. You talk about playing with it before you get out of bed? And it's like, no, son, you wake up soldier. Gotta go restroom right now. No chemical castration. Now somebody might be laying here, can't wait till the morning, check what happens. What up? But it's a psychobiochemically engineered drug. Check. Psychobiochemically engineered drug. Strips melanin content, suppresses serotonin. Black folks, we already have large, luscious lips, dark lips. But it's easy to tell when you've been affected by arsenic. Start to get the pinkish of the lip and the imaginary ring around the lips. Chronic blunt smokers, Phillies, all that shows up. But you tell me, I don't smoke it like that. You don't even understand where the arsenic is coming from, and I'll break that down for you when we come out of it. We are being poisoned while playing the game we so cool. 24/7. Things are designed to have you kill yourself When you have power, you don't give people who are powerless power. Check. You give them pseudo power. Check. How many of you ever heard the test of the white rat? Put the white rat in the maze and blah, 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 right? First thing you need to know, something flawed about that test anyway. A white mouse is mutated. It ain't have much sense. Check. So they treat you like you're the white mice. And we fall for the game, even in this activity. And I have to teach this to teams all over the country, male and female. First of all, I want to reinforce to the sisters. When it comes to this issue, I need to let you know something. Ultimately, the only thing a male can leave in this act with you is his, that's right, or seed. Check. After all is said and done, all I left behind with all those promises and lies, if I'm that type of man, is my seed. Check. My seed is designed to join with your egg. Check. See, this process of sex is deeper than what you thought. Because I hear young people say things like, well, sex is fun. That's when I have to get brutally honest. Listen, I've been married for 23 years. After a while, sex becomes a damn job. It becomes work. Damn right. Because your ego will be making like, and you're like, boy, you ain't 22 no more. Check. So can we be honest? Because young people think every time they engage in this, they're looking for rockets and stuff to go off. Like, we need to talk. Wait for somebody to say, I love you. If you ain't said I love you before you engage, you in trouble. Are you with me? So the seed is designed spiritually to join the egg. The egg is housed where? In the womb of a woman. See, that's awesome. That's spiritual too when you think about it. It's in a holy place. Oh, watch out now. I think I'm about to say something. It's in a holy place. And men who are in touch with their spirituality or their creator know it's a holy place. You don't believe me? Think about it, adults. When a man gets in the holy place and he knows the creator has something to do with that holy, what words do you hear in lovemaking? Oh my God. Now, when the guys show up in the room, did you get it? Check. That's a holy place. You get so comfortable in the holy place, you go to heaven. The thing that you know on earth close to heaven is your mama. So as a grown man, you begin to talk to your lover. You call her mama. That's not your mama, but you were in a holy place. So you call on God and refer to your lover as mama. As spiritual. So holy that after you emerge in the holy place, as strong as you are as a man, you go to sleep. Wake me up for the rebound. Wake me up for the rebound. Holy is that powerful. The black holy womb is so powerful that it puts a full-grown man to sleep. Think about it. It's in the holy place. Check. So look at the last letter in X. The last letter is X. Think about human beings. Human beings are made up of chromosomes. What letters do we use to describe them? X and Y. I'm going to show you how powerful the Creator is there. Look at the word sex since you want some. Human beings are made up of X and Y. The X is used to describe which sex? Female. But then you just said something, bro. Symbolically speaking, the last person who has the power, and whether or not there'll be some sex or not, symbolically speaking, is the woman. Check. Oh, come on, man, we gotta keep it real now. You can be with your mate a long time. You still got to ask for something. You just don't walk in there and clothes start falling off, Check. You be painting the house, and sweetheart, did you notice I've done the gutter as well? And I repaired the windows and I changed the oil in your car. You're secretly asking for something. Because she's in charge. Or if she gonna catch a headache. Check, back her, check, you know what? I'm just trying to prove to you where the power is. But because we are a patriotic system measured against a Eurosexist mentality, I think that it's mine and I take it when I want it. That's the mentality of a rapist. Do psychoanalysis on a rapist. Has nothing to do with pleasure that you can bring me. It's power. Like now I've been trained to walk in the house for her. Where's my booty? That's my booty. Where you been? Who you been talking to? Rage. Controlled by 3 letters. So female symbolically has the last say in whether or not there'll be sex. Check. But sisters, look. Look at the letter X again. It does something unique. What does it do? It's crossed. See? Creator told you something. As long as you keep it crossed, you ain't got to worry about sex. Check. Are you with me? X and Y. So we got this issue of sex. What letter represents the male? See, when we show up, we have been trained to talk that stuff. You get the word sexy. It's like I tell you how good you look, how good you smell. Damn, if you was mine. Check. This is what's happened when you miseducated about this activity. So we have videos and rappers who reinforce to our children things that's animalistic. Are you with me? So our young people hear the message, and our young ladies hear the message very early in life. Girls are sugar and spice, and boys are snips and snails, and see, snip means worthless piece of meat. So a male learns not to put any value on his body. So he ends up giving his precious jewels to any and everybody. And that's what E will reinforce. Because when you're under the influence of E, you have a sexual desire, and you don't discriminate. Remember, you're high. You're out of your mind. So you intercourse with male or female. And it's dangerous in our society since you're already wearing your pants way down here. Yeah. We need to think. So young boys are taught snips and snails and puppy dog's tails. Check. Puppies grow up to be what? Symbolically speaking, the dog learns to chase the what? That's right. Are you with me? Check. So symbolically speaking, when males are self-determined that dogs, what's up, my dog? I'm telling you, we have to back off that. See, historically, in this country, under the captions of Europeans, you couldn't have the title man. So when you became an elder on the plantation, you were called uncle. Before then, you was called boy. Now, come to modern time and deal with the modern form of our psychopathological perspectives of today, modern slavery. Understanding now, we don't get rid of the slave trade or anything like that because it's profitable. So what do you do now? You use new terms. So you're still not not a man, you're a dog. I reduce you to 4 legs. And I get you to sing about let's make love doggy style. Particularly in the late 80s and early 90s, every song was about doggy style. Check. Psychomedia, perpetrative disorder, syndrome 1, 2, and possibly 3. Take a deep breath, blow it out. My point, language. Let me show you why we get to, through a conversation, when a black male and a black female go at each other, I'm going to prove to you why 2 words always show up. The B word and MF. And I'm going to show you how it's processed. So the dog symbolism, male, chases when the dog gets the cat into the corner, what type of relationship do they have? They fight. They fight. That's violence. Check. How many of you know females who have been in a relationship where the dog, i.e. the male, kicks that butt all the time? And she rationalizes to you, y'all don't love you. He loved me. Y'all don't understand. The rule is still the same, sister. If he hits you once, he'll hit you again. Unless you get him some help while you have distance between the 2 of you. We're trying to produce a healthy nation. Check. The brothers, somebody come up to me and want to argue how is our place, okay? All right. We'll go reciprocity. What goes around comes around. Hope you don't have no female children. Check. Because you're going to like, Daddy, Pookie hit me. And you're going to explain to your daughter it's a man's place to do that? You're going to be talking about, I'll be there. You, baby, where's my pistol? Let's keep it real, Chad. So the dog chases the cat, gets the cat in the corner, and what relationship do they have? They fight, Chad. Wait a minute, let's look at it as male-female. When that male mistreats that female so much, and eventually I come back and I apologize, all that, what do she ultimately surrender to me as part of the makeup process? Sex. So the female ends up surrendering the... Are you with me, Jack? So she ends up giving up the sex. Check. But it came from a result of a what? Of what? Fight, which is violence. Sex plus violence equals rape. The equation is clear. Take your time. Take a deep breath. Take it in. Sex via manipulation is rape. Check. So now you become distant and void from your male lover because you're surrendering yourself, not because you have the compassion to do. You're doing it out of necessity to survive. Check. Now let's say a child is the result of this particular activity. The woman has internalized what the male has put on her for so long in this relationship, and the favorite word from males to females historically in our community has been the word male to female has been B. But let's look here. So the sister has internalized the word so much, she sees herself as a B. Check. Now people start coming to me, start breaking it down. It stands for the beautiful, intelligent, shut up. That's your Eurocentric training taking over. Check. I'm here to detoxify you. But look, they had an offspring, right? They had an offspring. Society, let's say it's a male child, check. Society calls the child a what? That's right. And she learns to call her own son a son of, are you with me? Check. Are you with me? Society calls the child a bastard, check. She has internalized the term B because she's been called someone for so long that even her and her girlfriends call each other B. Check. The way that men internalize dog and call each other dog. I'm telling you, it's a setup. And it's reinforced in our songs. So now, she begins to call her own son an S-O-B. Check. That means he's being mistreated by whom? His mother. What sex is she? Female. So in turn, this boy, B-O-Y, grows up to mistreat whom? Females. So he's a male who mistreats who? A female. That's why when a male calls a woman a bitch, she naturally responds by calling him an MF, a male that mistreats females. Take a deep breath. Blow it out. See, the next time y'all hear people argue, y'all gonna listen. Shh, I bet you $5. You call her bitch. I bet you $5. She say, motherfucker, watch. No disrespect. But it's part of the vicious cycle because you can't teach an old dog what? New tricks so it repeats itself. I say it, my son says it, my grandson will say it. And then we want to look for terrorists. And they're right here in our own backyard. They're in our house. They're on the end of our lips disguised as cigarettes. You want to look for a terrorist. You want to throw extra sympathy through some people who make their living and survival in this country by selling you malt liquor and nicotine and send it back to fund their war. That's why you say we've been attacked. Psychological propaganda. Check. And to be accepted, you run out and wave your flag to let everybody know you want to be accepted. Now, I'm not questioning your patriotism. I'm asking you, are you willing to be a patriot? Are you willing to die for the revolution? And we historically have been so trained, we're willing to die for other people's causes instead of our own. That's why you have to ask yourself, are we dying for a cause or a because? Check. Remember the song, Girls, 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 Girls? Jigga Man, why you treat me like animal? A #1 song in America that teaches black children of all those images of women you see in the video, hate the black one. And it's #1 in the country. People who you salute every day, you say they keeping it real, they down for push marijuana to your children in their videos. Make their living off of you buying Old English 800. And you have no idea that the price of a slave from Old English 800 is the price of a slave the English paid for African peoples on the bottom Old English 800. I was passing Langston Hughes Elementary, and I saw a sister outside picking up garbage around the school. And in her clear bag, I could see 2 40-ounce bottles. And I said, you know what? That's part of the psychological war. That's advertising placement, because you can't convince me these bottles end up where they do purposely, by accident. I go to too many places. The terrorists is right under our nose. I hope that tonight that you get an opportunity to purchase a book or peruse a book, because it's going to help you deal with and inform young people of some of the things that they're dealing with within our community. I'm going to show you some images quickly before we get out of here. And one is a popular demand, and we've done this last time. Let me just show it to you again quickly. And these handouts up here are not handouts to share. These are learning tools, so please, I don't want anyone to get the message. It's okay to walk off with them. Check. So, please, I don't mind you looking at them, but please put them back. Okay, the ingredients of malt liquor and why you should be aware, particularly if you're smoking marijuana as well.
Bring that closer.
We lost the sound for a moment, but check. Okay, this can be found in volume 2 of the book. And quickly going over what's in malt liquor and beer, trace amounts that they won't tell you about. That we talked about. This is a piece of my research that caused the major problem. I was offered as much as $750,000 not to reveal this information. But simply, my people are not for sale. Check. You can't be. You can't be part-time. Can't be part-time in this business of saving lives. Menthol, numbness, pain reliever, addictive lung, sex organ damage, penile shrinkage found in cigarettes. Methanol, wood, alcohol, poison, mental illness, cancer, liver, kidneys, and sex organ damage found in rocket fuel and formaldehyde. Ethanol, narcotic, starch, alcohol, poison, narcotic explosive, liver, kidney, sex organ damage found in gasoline. This is not guesswork. This is scientific research. If you don't believe me, take a fresh chicken bone that hasn't been cooked, place it inside of a bottle of Old English 800 or St. Ives, come back and check on it. Within 72 hours, the bone will be totally disintegrated. I give you that challenge in the book. Then call me and told me I told you a lie. Then tell me what biology teacher told you this. Tell me what's on the bottom of a bottle that told you that would happen. So if it's tearing apart the marrow of a chicken bone, what's it doing to the lining of your intestines? To the lining of your penis, to your ovaries? Why are urinary infection tracts are up as 50% amongst men of color who have high consumption of malt liquor? What's up is this? Butanol, poison, narcotic, explosive, cancer, petroleum, alcohol, liver, kidney, sex organ damage found in lighter fluid used as a solvent and nail polish remover. Yeah, so if you don't want to put a fresh chicken bone, that one that's been cooked, take a piece of red meat, place it inside of a bottle of malt liquor, check on it in the morning. It'll be blue. Isobutanol, poison, natural gas, alcohol, eye, lung, skin, liver, kidney, sex organ damage, fuel used to make gasoline, white sugar in our bleach, poison, causes diabetes, blindness, gangrene, addiction, on and on and on. Acetaldehyde, and that's a bad boy. Poison, paralysis, this is what causes your penis to go limp. And you find that in hard liquor as well, gentlemen. That's why you end up, next morning asking how it was. And you better hope these sisters keep lying, check. She's gonna call Tyrone. But anyway, acetaldehyde, paralysis, nerve, brain, lung, skin, digestive, sex organ damage. That's the 5th one out of 12 that we list that causes sex organ damage. It creates penis castrations, castration of the penis. Check. Through biochemical warfare. You talking about anthrax. You worried about your damn mail while you got a 40 in the refrigerator. You worried about a drive-by, a bullet coming through a window while you got cigarettes, cigars, herb in your house. Pork. Well, let me leave that alone. Histamines, shock, swelling, skin rash, headaches, low blood pressure kill you as quick as high blood pressure. So what happens for black men who have hypertension and not aware of it, particularly when you consume alcohol, you have this major crash. You get this woo feeling when you stand up. Okay? Low blood pressure kill you as quick as high blood pressure. Causes the blood vessels to expand. That's why malt liquor is promoted for you to chug it. See, every drug they give you directions on how to take it. Whether it's illicit or legal. Check. Suppresses your immune system because so when your immune system is suppressed, you become more vulnerable to HIV and other things like that. And that's what we found out. Heroin suppresses the immune system. Cocaine suppresses the immune system. We don't know enough about HIV infections to keep saying that it's sexually transmitted only. That's foolish. People find out they have HIV and they be trying to say, they're not just trying to figure out their sex list or whether they took a shot, shared a needle. Because some people ain't been done. They're like, how in the heck did this happen? We received limited information about HIV transmission. And I'm letting y'all know I was with Magic Johnson 2 weeks ago out in San Diego. Healthy as a horse. As big as one, too. I said, what the hell is this? I said, boy, Dr. Africa be telling the truth. Because we like being tricked. Check. We do. Phenol, bad boy, carbon dioxide poison, convulsion. This will cause you alcohol poison as you hear about it. Circulatory collapse, paralysis, coma, numbness, burns, digestive problems, create digestive, headache, skin rash, highly poisonous, a disinfectant. That's why young people on the reservations, the indigenous people of this country, you identify as Indians. When they can't get alcohol, they get a can of Lysol and puncture a nail in it and just consume the Lysol. Yeah. You can make malt liquor by going over to the gas station, getting some gasoline, mix it with some sugar and or some bleach, and just 40 away. I'm giving you the ingredients. That's like reading a pack of cigarettes and saying they ain't talking about me. Anyway, poison, narcotic, toxic gas. That's why you have a lot of gas and pass gas a lot when you drink malt liquor. Ice and phenol, alcohol poison, irritated eyes, red eyes, found in the hairspray. They also would drink. You can drink hairspray straight and get a buzz. Check and die. Okay, truly. That's why you go into you see ice and phenol is also found in nail polish remover too. That's why you see people who do your nails and your stuff like that, they wear a mask. But you don't wear a mask when you drink it. Because you cool. You keep it in real though. The rappers say it's cool. Rappers do what they told. Entertainers do what they told, not just rappers. Check. And those who don't do what they told, you never hear their music on the radio. Dead prayers and the list goes on. Check. So people get co-opted. Late time I gotta get paid, gotta pay for the Lexus. It's Lexus, boy. Alright? Cobalt and lead. This is bad right here. Horrible. How do you think cobalt and lead get in malt liquor? Now think about who's ever been to the hospital before. Who's ever had an x-ray? What did they cover you with? What did they shoot you with? They x-rayed malt liquor to kill the impurities. See, there was a time that when the byproducts of beer was so bad, they used to dump it into the river, but it was killing the fish, and the government said you can no longer do that. Legislation was passed in 1948. Then it was put into the earth, and it was burning through the barrels that was buried beneath the earth. So it's killing the earth. So in 1953, they said you can no longer do that. They said, wait a minute, beer is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We can't stop making it. What we gonna do with the byproducts? Somebody say, hey, put sugar with it. Tell some people to make them sexually prowess. I got the group. So 6 major cities at the time was tested from 1956 to 1963. And Baltimore was one of them. Check. And my research is correct. Smith's Malt Liquor Bull was here. Smith's Malt Liquor Bull was here and in Chicago. When the first malt liquor, it was a test site here for 6 years. Just like new brands of heroin is tested in Baltimore. You take it to Baltimore before you give it to white kids in Seattle. Come on, y'all. But they wouldn't do this. We've been attacked. This is not about hating any group of people. It's not about white. It's not a white people lecture. It's about when are you going to ground yourself in your Africanness and open your third eye. And I'm showing you that they give you things through entertainment and chemical byproducts to keep your third eye closed. You hear from your third eye every day. Your third eye say, hey, don't go through that light. Slow down. Hey, your son lied to you. Your daughter's sneaking out. That's your third eye, your African con. And you were like, they wouldn't do that. I work with your kids every day. Check. And they measure themselves against a model that they see on TV. Entertainment is not all bad, but you need to know how the word entertainment is defined. Break it down into its syllables. Enter means to come into. Tame comes from the word taint. I didn't say it, it's in the dictionary. Tame comes from the word taint, which means to poison. Entertainment means to seal. Now, redefine the word entertainment and wonder why they give your kids shows like Buffy, Samantha, the Teenage Witch, Angel, Harry Potter, the Dark Angel. What the hell is this? So you have African children want to get down with Harry. Now, as African cousins people, you ought to already know that ain't cool. Because we know about every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Are you with me, Chet? Get in touch with your Africanness, your consciousness, revisit. Carbon dioxide. I mean, you might as well put your mouth to the, up to a fire extinguisher if you're gonna drink malt liquor. Ginseng. Now they will print that. Y'all, I saw hurricane signs out there. This is a hurricane signs in a lot of windows here. Hurricane malt liquor. The hurricane malt liquor has a sign on the bottle that says ginseng, like it's an aphrodisiac. Check. I got some shocking news for you, and Dr. Africa will back it up with you. There is no proof that ginseng serves as a sexual aphrodisiac. There is no scientific proof. Check. Now, if you believe it and you take it, it'll work. Check. That's how powerful the mind is. So malt liquor essentially becomes urban Viagra. That's how it's sold to you. But it would not work that way. So it moves on and on and on and on. And these things are further in. What I'm going to do, brother, just run it to the end. And then as I dismiss people after Q&A, then people can go purchase whatever. And so brother needs to make some announcements. He needs to come up forward, Jabari, pretty soon, because I'll be done in a few moments. Again, some of the target areas, again, for alcohol, particularly malt liquor. Check. Reproductive organs in both sexes, the intestines, pancreas. So, pancreatic cancer is up amongst people of color, particularly in females. Okay? So we need to be aware of this. And this is proven information on blotted skin patches and discolorization of the lips, particularly with the combination of marijuana smoking and alcohol. And the reason that happens is because the cigars that you're cutting are lined with arsenic. Then that is legal, because arsenic not only a poison, but it's a preservative. Okay, the problem is the government allows that to be legal because you are not supposed to lick the wrappings of a cigar. But when you're making a Philly or blunt, it's surgery. Because you got to slice it open, check. Dump out one form of tobacco or weed and put in another. And then to seal it, what do? You lick and you swallow. Now, if you lick and spit, you're still in trouble. Because arsenic is an absorbent. As soon as it touches you, your tongue is like a sponge for it. That's why when you handle it, you would have to wear gloves. So somebody's taught us to do a blunt. Slice it. You smoke it, take in the arsenic, then you kiss your babies. Arsenic is an absorbent, so it goes through the skin. See, I killed you and your children while you're getting cool all at one time, and you think you're ready for a revolution. Get out the way. You're in the way of the revolution. You don't want to make the sacrifice to be in a revolution. You talk it. That's why you say, we've been attacked. Are you got patriotism? Are you willing to be a patriot? Things that you consume every day in the game called Be Cool kills you. So, there, quickly. do the advertisement, entertainment, broke down the word entertainment for you. To come in to, just to prove to you, I got to go to the library and do some research. They clearly tell you how we get addicted. They tell you in an article, sex, drugs, drinking, and smoking. Scientists are discovering the chemicals, secrets to how we get addicted. I saw that and I said, oh, sookie now. For those who love research, May 5th, 1997. You got to get it. And look what the parody they use. Give you a human with fish lips. And this is a powerful symbol here. The hook. So in order to get you that way, I got to convince you it's part of your culture. Cool cigarettes, Newport. Hell, if you knew the history of slave ships leaving Newport, you wouldn't smoke one. Okay. Well, I said okay like I'm whispering, didn't I? Tell all the business. Check. All right, so I could go through those, but I've covered a lot of those with you. I just want to touch on one other thing with you quickly. Again, back to killing our women. Okay, and this is on that activity because they paying the bills now. I'm telling you, to have the courage, I'm coming, Jabari, I'm coming. Have the courage, parents, to be what the Creator intended you to be after you laid down and put yourself into this position. Understand that you're not in this alone. Spiritually, look at this. Insert the letter I right in there. What do you get? Parent. What does that mean numerically? So stop saying single parents. You're never alone. Oh, the great I am. If you're with me now and you feel that one, you're never alone. But look at the word parent. What is the last four letters in parent? R-E-N-T. What word does it spell? If you pay the rent, hell, you in charge. You put the rules down in the house. I'm coming in your house and your child is running you. We have lost our courage to be parents because we're comparing what we're supposed to be to a Euro model. Gentlemen, I gave you the whole scenario around the word sex and left you with the letter X saying the females have the last word. But if Y represents male, look who's in charge of family. Look at that. And if you look at this, I'm going to show you how powerful the Creator is. Reposition those letters. You get the word I am, which means God. God is in the middle of family, so He's right beside you. So when we turn our back on our children, we turn our back on God. When you turn God around, it's dogs. So then you begin to greet each other. Yo, dog, what up, dog? And then when a dog sees a woman as a bitch, are you with me? So that's why the term bitch comes out of our mouth towards women. And women turn around and say, MF, a male that mistreats females. And our children repeat this cycle when they go to school.
So they go to school and they go to sleep.
They go to sleep when they get to school. Check. They go to school, they don't question the teacher. They don't ask anything in class. Check. They don't write, they don't take any notes in class. Check. They don't bring you notebooks for the end of the week for your approval. You don't put your signature on nothing. Check. As I talked to young people the last time I was here, the fourth grade, you receive in schools an F. Above an F is a D. Above a D is a C. Above a C, if you keep climbing, is a B. Above a B is an A. And above an A is O for outstanding. When you get an F, don't cry and say it's all over. Would you say F, fly my way to a D. D, dig my way to a C. C, sing my way to a B. B, bounce my way to an A. A always leads to an O, and O equals outstanding. And outstanding turned around is the word standing out. So your children can come and they can crawl into school, but they can leave the school walking tall to I'm standing out. Hey, I've got the grades to show. I want the world to know we cannot fail. You are the Alpha and the Omega. We cannot fail. Get the information, get the knowledge. And the word knowledge is the word ledge. If you don't know, you'll fall off the ledge. Get the knowledge. Support the organizations that bring people here to share with you the truth and the reality as it speaks. Are you with me? If you want to deal with terrorists, you can wave your flag, but don't wave the white flag of surrender. Don't do it. We have raised the American flag on this issue since 9/11, and some of us don't have a flag that records our history, that reflects our history. We have to ask the question, where do they sell one of those at? And or if we wave that, we'll be seen as something else. But you have to stop waving the flag, the white flag of surrender. I think we should come up with a universal symbol that we're going to wave outside our house next to that flag and say, this means we're not tolerating drug trade. This means we're not tolerating sex trade. This means we're not tolerating political prisoners being captured in our community. This means we're not all those things that we're sick of. We're not having poverty in our community. This means we're going to support. Now, see what happens. It's got to come, Bible, because we're in trouble. There's a hole in the boat. There's a hole in the boat, and the boat is taking on water. And we have reached one conclusion. Extra weight makes the boat sink faster. If you're not going to help us deal with the hole in the boat, you need to jump the hell out the boat. Check. Choices. Whether you're at the church, the mosque, the temple, you need to practice truth. You need to practice truth. I don't care what your faith is. Don't spend so much energy dogging somebody else. Practice truth in yours. Pray everything to be right. So if you Christian, quit talking about Muslims and pray everything to be right. If you Muslim, quit talking about Buddhists and pray everything to be right. Because every tenet I've ever seen in every faith that you study talks about loving thy brother. From the very beginning, from the hieroglyphs on the walls and on the tombs, talking about loving your fellow man. We bring it together and heal ourselves. That's how you deal with 911, by giving the 411. And deal with your stress. Medically, I'm speaking. Deal with your stress. You may not think it has affected you or touched you, but we all dealing with it in some type of way. Deal with it. If that means getting information, giving information. If you recognize people are being misinformed, then give them correct information. Folks, we dying. The only resource we have is young brother, this sister. Young brother, this sister. It's the only resource we have. And they stood up here and they said, when I grow up, I want to be like you. Man or fire. Man or fire. Man or beast. Woman or queen. When they look at you, do they want to be like you? And I don't care what your past has been. The great thing about it is behind you. Watch out, I think I just said something. I don't care what you could have sold more drugs in a little bit. Guess what? You have the ability to make that yesterday. The Creator is awesome. You have the ability to say, that's my past. And have the ability to turn around and say, I'm going to teach you what I learned from that experience. You could have sold your body before, but you have the ability to turn around and say, that's my past. I'm going to teach you the things that will force you to sell your body, but you'll never make a mistake. You could have misused women, abused women, and or beat women. But that's your past. You have the ability to hold workshops and teach other brothers how to manage their anger. That's dealing with terrorism. Check. That's dealing with terrorism. Brother Jabari, I forgot what I was supposed to do at this point, bro. So, okay, yes. I'm closing at this point unless there's a question and answer on a particular thing. And I know I was asked to do a lot. I tried to cover those in bases in jest when I went past them, but I'll take some of those shortly if I'm allowed to, so we can move quickly on that. So,
Brother Coach Power Hand. We're gonna have a question and answer period, but we're gonna take a brief intermission. Before you leave to go to intermission, we need to raise some funds. We're gonna keep it real. That's right. Today, we need to raise some donations.
Difficult in the African nation, the African American community to deal with is because heterosexism has been one of those issues for us that's been shame blame based and placed in the so-called the clouds and haven't dealt with on a conscious level. And we're to a point now, because of the model that we follow, that we have to deal with it on a conscious level. Not only that, it is with the lesbianism, but with the gay relationships as well, homosexual relationships as well. And the question essentially is about how do we deal with it without being offensive to the parent or teaching the child not to love the parent. And I don't know if I have the whole answer to that, but I do know that I teach a human sexuality course with young men from the 5th grade, from 5 to 12. And you would be, with young men and young ladies, and you would be blown away with the trend and the pattern that I find with my high school girls, which is a popular movement in the black subculture of teens right now, that is for girls, it's okay to have a girlfriend. I mean as in lover. And I'm saying that this is the residual effect from men being imprisoned, men being eliminated, men, residue left over from high population having male homosexual relationships in our community, that now women are turning inward. And also a result of the abusive relationship. So they run there for comfort, not so much as for sexuality. That's my personal observation. Secondly, in dealing with our children on the issue is that, because the boys are rebelling. So what happens is the young male gets seen his mother with a female lover, internalizes that and begins to suffer from IO, which we call internalized oppression, which means he strikes out at other females. He strikes out at mom, okay? You have the making of an abusive male now, because intuitively he knows X is supposed to be with Y. X plus X equals 9. Y plus Y equals 9. And so they're wrestling with that. So we're going to have a great deal of psychological trauma, which we have, which affects the educational process. And in dealing with that, I don't know, and I can't be politically correct, but we still have to teach young people about what we know in reproducing our own. And that's male and female. Whether you want to say it's right and or wrong, personally, I believe male, female, female, male. Okay? But I know people are running there for different reasons. And I don't know how we do it without being offensive to the child. And because some people want you to be politically correct and say it's a choice. No sooner you start teaching kids it's a choice, then you have this other political cycle that says it's intuitively. That's what a person is born to do. And this society limits where we are sexually. And I'm just telling you, we've been poisoned all the way around. And it's another way to keep Africans from reproducing themselves. Thank you. Any other questions? Sister?
I know that you're saying, and I know it's very true, that every solution basically for us starts in the community, starts at home, starts in the community. With the entertainment industry, is there any national effort being made amongst black people to control video industry. I have children, I have grandchildren, and I'm really appalled at the music. And I love a good song as well as the next person. But sometimes I'm rock, like, I'm going down, down, baby, da 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 da. Until I actually realized what they were saying, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm trying to figure out, is there any national effort going on amongst black people to do something with the music industry to make them accountable, to put the images that they have on the, the videos, just the music, the words, the songs.
Yes.
I know it begins in the community, but is there a national effort?
Yes, there was national efforts in which I had the pleasure of being introduced to, invited to work with as part of a roundtable discussion. And a good friend of myself and Dr. Powers, DeLacy Davis, was the one who became a spokesperson at the table. It was with Minister Farrakhan and a great deal of the rappers, and something that Vibe magazine has supported the Nation of Islam. And the great thing about it, all these entertainers and minds of the social welfare of African people were at the table. The bad thing about it, we were just at the table. Nothing has changed. Because people are still being paid. Those black faces that you see still have to answer to someone that doesn't look like them that runs Sony, RCA, and Motown.
That's right.
Okay, they determine the ingredients of the recipe for a video. Okay, Sister Soldier spoke on it brilliantly, I believe, in the past and in her lectures, where she talks about people will pull those strings. You don't talk about the death and destruction of your own community, you don't sell. Okay? Because you can't say those things that some of the young people say in rap about their own community. They can't cross it over and compare it to and say, do that to another community. They'll be yanked off the air, they'll be punished, they'll be brutalized, or whatever. Or they'll be made to deal with. Perfect example is Ice-T.
Right.
Many years ago, Ice-T came out with Cop Killer.
Yeah.
And Papa Bush was in at that time, and the stick that it raised. But Ice-T was doing what was mandated to him via the company he was with. Okay? And so when he did Cop Killer, the deal was, listen, we're not going to totally take you out the picture. We're going to put you in the picture. So they took him out of video and hard rap and put him in TV roles, successful TV roles and movies, and every role he played was a cop. So we get co-ops. So there's movements. We protested. I was just telling brother, when we were riding over here, I said we went out to LA and marched on Fox when they had the program where they wanted to bring the program where they had the butler, playing the old shuffle and jive role. And when Def Jam, the brothers out of New York was doing the Def Jam, when it was HBO had the specials come on night and made the mama jokes. That was like in 96, 97. We successfully had those removed from the air. However, some things come full circle. Now they're producing one that's going to feature rap and poetry, talking about revolution. And I'm real curious to see how long that's going to last. Real curious. But then again, I'm afraid that people are pimping that because neo soul is so popular right now, and it produces consciousness that people are going to ride that and milk it for what they can until it goes away. But there is no strong national movement. It's just pseudo because people give grants to have a meeting and people find a way to milk that money and you have a round table and somebody still come back out singing a song saying a piage and all that stuff. And have you ever heard these songs edited while on the radio? That's a joke. They still saying the word. Right. And all those type of things. So yes, absolutely. deal with that a lot, particularly with my junior high and high schools. And there was a song that was very popular. The young people here have to help me because I'm horrible at these lyrics. There was a song that's very popular in the summertime. I want to be a thug. You remember that song? Yeah. How did that really go? Thug, whatever. Yeah, I'm a thug. Yeah, okay. So what I do with the young men is, they were singing that song in the class or whatever, and I tell them to go out and print the first lyrics in the song. So they write it on the wall, so underline the word thug. Then we go to the dictionary again, get the word thug out of the dictionary. What does it say? One who commits and are related to criminal acts, also known as a criminal. So let's sub the word thug in the song for the word criminal. Let's sing the song now. Baby, I want to be a criminal. So what's wrong with that now? I ain't trying to be no criminal. Wait a minute, you said you want to be a thug. See, you see this divorce between reality and fantasy? And in the book that I'm writing, entitled Looking for Pookie and Peaches, I compare the visual image of some of the pictures that you saw up here of the brothers in the gangster suits and stuff like that with a white picture of Al Capone. Same position thing, same thing like that. So I'm showing you that the brothers are dealing with what their historical memory tells them. So there's a celebration as black men, young black men, to be thugs, to worship dead, powerful white men. The same people who you say you hate, that causes death and destruction and delivering drugs on a timely basis to your community. There's a deep psychological desire to be and or mimic them. The one thing that your son can be dealing with is anxiety separation, and our rejection. And that's a lot to say and put on the plate, because that could be the wrong diagnosis, okay? But it sounds like that. And the question that you asked me earlier about getting high, how do you tell they're high on E? One of the things that you can tell if your child is doing E or your teen is doing E, that child will just about agree with everything you say while they're high. They become very agreeable. Very, okay?
He's hard around the house.
So he's defiant and hard.
He is right. Normally, he is the person that doesn't say anything easy and nothing like it. And he'll make you stick to the rules, and he'll like nobody about to say. But when he'll get that glare in his eye, and I was
Glaze,
like,
look.
yes, it's very glaze, and I'm like, what? You're high. What are you on?
But see, normally what is happening though, if they're taking E, they're chasing with herb and or alcohol. So if you take that E is the upper, then you put the suppressant, so you get this middle tone behavior going on, which is very agreeable, whatever. And I'm telling you, it's a very toxic combination as well. Very toxic. And we need to be careful because young people have responded to the education that we're giving to them about crack. Crack is so bad, cocaine is so bad, so they say, okay, I hear you now. And now I ain't taking crack. At least I'm taking a pill, but I'm not taking crack. You see what I'm saying? So they're justifying taking it. And besides, it's what's being pushed right now. And it could be a number of things, but people do drugs in order to mask pain, in order to deal with something that they can't deal with. So the drug becomes that alternate thing, that negotiator to deal with it. But it's a way of screaming for help. So I would say, one, be careful who you get to evaluate your child. If you're getting counseling service or whatever, you really need to try to get someone that looks like you.
That's right. I want to know who your opinion is, because they immediately want to institutionalize him.
And psycho meds.
And put him on drugs.
The psycho meds are easy. And your insurance will be willing to pay for psycho meds. Because it produces a drug addict. Yeah. But also keep in mind too, when your kids are doing, even when they're doing psycho meds that's geared towards hyperactivity, you got to understand, Ritalin is the first cousin to cocaine.
That's right.
So you ask me, why did Pookie smoke herb? The hell, Pookie been getting high since the 4th grade. Okay? So also, your E serves a purpose with young people because E mimics itself just like Ritalin does in the body. Okay? So you got to remember now, 24% from the statistic that I looked up, 24% of all black males between the 3rd and 8th grade here in Baltimore public schools are under the influence of psychotropic medications, number one being Ritalin. So when that is stopped, or when they need to get that boost on a weekend, you don't issue Ritalin during that time. That's school time or in the summer month. Go get you some meat. Do you understand that the generation that's been raised on psychotropic medication has now been set up to be able to get that equals that psycho med out on the streets for $5?
Yep.
So, long-term discussion, long-term planning for the destruction of African children, people with the ability to reproduce melanin. I won't get too deep on that, but you have to understand that's what's going on. An educator can stand in front of the classroom and say, he needs meds. Tell a nurse, and a nurse convince a parent. But in order to convince the parent, the government says, we'll pay you SSI.
That's right.
Now, if you're in poverty and you don't have no money, you're exchanging your child's body for an addiction to get a check. It's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. How many sons evaluated by someone who's doing natural beds, natural holistic healing? Is anyone here have a connection to someone? Okay. Okay. That's where you want to go. Okay. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Brother Lyle.
Thank you, brother. Let's get that around of applause. That's what the community is all about. We got to connect with one another. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
What is melanin and its importance?
Melanin and its support. Wow, there are several books back there that you can peruse in our kid. But melanin is that thing that melanin is ultimately is the source of pineal gland that dictates a lot of things. From a rhythm to thought process, for you dividing common sense and being able to rationalize things and process is so important. People with high melanin content has the ability to do things more readily than other groups of people. That's not a superiority statement. That's a fact. That's why they try to reproduce the process to heighten melanin. They're trying to produce melanin pills. That's why they study African people. Okay, melatonin. Now, every human being has it, but the darker you are, the more abundant it is in you. Now, how do you suppress it? You have to give something to the body that excretes that suppresses serotonin. Okay? Look at serotonin as like putting a coat of paint on the wall that had a scratch on it. You know, it's there, it covers it up, it keeps it pretty. Okay? And that's what that is. Well, when you drink like malt liquor, it dries it up. It expands it causes it to be depleted. And when that becomes depleted, the blessings and the things that you get from the gift of having high melanin context, you don't get the benefits from. And I talk about that briefly in that book, but more in depth in volume 1 of my book. Absolutely. So melanin. Now let me tell you the truth about volume 1. Volume 1 literally was bought out. And someone wrote a huge check, bought all those books, and can't seem to find anybody to print that book again. So I'm looking for someone who has the ability to publish in our print, to have that's willing to go that extra mile with us and put volume 1 back out there. I mean, literally, even Dr. Powers was with me when I was approached in a major city and offered huge sums of money to sell the rights not to write that book. See, because it builds on volume, because I had found out additional information since volume 1. And I'm a layman researcher. So this stuff is in the libraries. You know, it's at Emory University in Georgia. You're going to look at this stuff and you're going to say, whoa.
Yeah.
Dang. Even the way that they market the commercials and use scriptures to sell you things. You know, last time I was here, I think I did the 3 frogs. They showed everyone the commercial of 3 frogs, and people would not leave the joint because they wanted to see that commercial again because of the hidden things that we showed you in that commercial. So, absolutely. It gets deep. Last one. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Last one. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You know what the problem are with the young men, young men and women in teenagers? What are we going to do to save the small ones from going in the same direction? Because some people is going to go sacrifice.
Yes.
They're going to stay with the enemy. You have them in the village and you say, this is your village, stay here, don't go out. They jump over the fence. And you go and you bring them in back and they jump the fence again.
Well, we know we're being
What
co-opted.
is going to happen with the younger ones now? Because this is my big brother, and I may want to do what he's doing.
Yes.
How are we going to, because if we're going to talk about this unity and restoration, the restoration of African people, then we'll have to save the ones that are not yet destroyed or violated.
Well, we have to counter what I call in the hip-hop society, the bling-bling syndrome. You remember that movie, everybody with the bling-bling? Had no idea what bling-bling was. I'm still trying to find out what it is. But because someone said it, everybody wanted the bling-bling, which means I'm willing to kill to get that look, to have those chains of oppression around my neck and on my fingers. And it's hard to protect the children with that, like you said, if everyone in the house wants the bling-bling at any cost. And what we have to do is just move towards consciousness. What your song said earlier, we talk about loving the family. And that's what we have to do. The simple exercise that I gave you to do with children every morning, I love myself. I respect myself. I forgive myself. And if you do the exercise with your children, you'll detoxify a lot of things and you'll neutralize a lot of things that they're going to deal with during the day. Because when that African child leaves your house, knowing that they can say hair, good, nose, good, lips, good, skin, good, body, good things in, good things out. When they can say that, they have more of a weapon to deal with someone who comes up to them and introduces them to a drug. Your children do not find crack on the street and out of curiosity, pick it up and smoke it.
That's right.
They do not find ecstasy or E on the street and pick it up and just take a pill. It doesn't happen that way. So it's manufactured, it's pushed to us, and it's in language. And let me say this about language. If you want a key to unlocking the mysteries of the success of our children, you have to learn about the tongue. Now, tomorrow night, we're going to be blessed with one of the most, and I'm taking credit for this because I gave this hookup. A colleague of mine, Dr. Smith will be here tomorrow. And PhD, Long Beach, California, done work at UCLA, USC, Compton Community College. Profound information on Ebonics, King's English, the Queen's English. You know, every time I say him, I remind me that I'm trilingual. I'm trying to speak the language. And he talks about the beauty, the gift, and the power in our tongues. And I mean, if you enjoyed yourself tonight, I mean, you'll be knocked out tomorrow night. I'm purposely staying over in town another night in order to hear this lecture. It is awesome. And you have to be here. This brother flew all the way in from California. I only came from Ohio. He's coming all the way from California. And believe me, in reality speaking, I feel that I'm a part of reality speaking. We don't have the money yet. So this brother came because we told him the family in Baltimore needs him to be here.
Yes, we do.
And we can show our appreciation by coming out tomorrow night bringing a cousin with us. Check. You know, and I'm telling you, he's going to have materials for you as well. So like he said, if you fit to go, he's going to show you the value of the word fitna, where it came from, why we got there, why we don't use as many words as other people to say what we got to say. You know, but the power of being bilingual, trilingual, and all those other things. So if you can, you need to be here tomorrow night to hear Dr. Smith. And I just want to say there have been a tremendous opinions and all those other words that I cannot pronounce by my audience. And I thank you for being here with us. And be blessed and safe. And the Creator be with you. Thank you so much.